Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors. Joanne, thank you very much for this very kind introduction. Should I remove the book so that I'm quite short? I should probably have something so that you can see me all, and I hope you can hear me as well. And thank you very much for having me. This is the first event I'm doing as the book is launched in the United States. It's a revised and slightly updated version of the book that I launched in London in September, and which certainly got people talking and was well reviewed and very thoroughly reviewed. It is now being translated into Italian and Russian, which I'm pleased to say, and potentially also in Arabic, with other languages on their way. And my travels have taken me from Oslo to Singapore to India to Brussels and beyond, talking about these issues, which I regard as universal. At the end of 2007, the question hit me. The question encapsulated so many of the concerns I had been having about the state of British and global politics and economics, about the state of civil liberties, and perhaps most importantly, about the state of us, the people. Why is it that so many people around the world, whatever their culture, whatever their circumstance, whatever their geography, whatever their history, appear willing to give up certain freedoms in return for either security or prosperity? That is the question I ask throughout the book. The choices of destination might seem arbitrary to some, but there was method in it. In order of the chapters, it was Singapore, China, Russia, the United Arab Emirates, India, Italy, the UK, and the US. Why? First of all, freedom for sale does not look at tyrannical regimes that rule by the barrel of the gun, where families and parents denounce each other, where the state is an unambiguously malevolent force, and there is no element of consent. Therefore, this is not about, for example, Zimbabwe or North Korea or Burma. In these countries, there's no pact between the government and the people, but simply an instinct to survive. Nor do I focus on countries with their own particularities, such as Israel and its conflict with Palestine, or Hugo Chavez's Venezuela, or post-apartheid South Africa. Instead, in the course of a year's travels, I focused on countries that, whatever their political hue, had accepted the terms of globalization. The model I cite is Singapore, the state in which I was born and which I have long felt an affinity towards. I'm constantly struck by the number of people I know, good friends, who very eloquently defend a system that elevates individual restraint in return for the collective good. This is what I call the Pact, or the trade-off. Of course, this is shorthand, and I develop my theme in detail, but even though others bridle at it, I'm comfortable with the term. It simply asks the question, why do those people in that country, friends of mine in Singapore, who are extraordinarily well-traveled, have very high tertiary degrees, nevertheless feel it quite normal and even quite desirable to put to one side one of the most elementary freedoms, freedom of speech? I had originally envisaged the book as falling into the post-1989 globalization genre, as articulated by the likes of Francis Fukuyama, Fareed Zakaria, Robert Kagan, Tom Friedman. Note that all these thinkers are American rather than British. I don't think the Brits do thinking very well. In other words, I saw it through the template of a new order emanating in the East, challenging the hegemony of the West. This was going to be called maybe the New World Order. I went on to think about a working title, the Pact. I finally settled on freedom for sale, realizing that actually we all do it. We all make the trade-off, whatever system of government we live under. Now I realize the universal nature of the Pact. We are, whether we live in democracies or authoritarian or semi-authoritarian regimes, closer than we think. I have not sought to compare countries. I have no score sheet. The Pact is played out in different circumstances and cultures and at different speeds. We each choose different freedoms in our own countries, which we are prepared to cede. So therefore, in some countries it's freedom of expression, in some it's the right to vote out your government, in some it's an impartial jury. judiciary. In others, it's the ability to get on with your life without being spied upon. In some countries, it's a combination of these and more. In day-to-day terms, such restrictions as these affect actually only a small number of people. These people are, I might use the term, people who go out of their way to rock the boat, troublemakers, journalists who criticize the state or who publish information that casts the powerful in a negative light, lawyers who defend them and people like them, such as representatives of NGOs, and opposition politicians and activists. The rest of the population, maybe 99%, carry on regardless. They enjoy what I call their private freedoms, to live more or less as they wish, and most importantly, to make and spend money. So private freedoms are your freedom to lead your own atomized existence. They are freedom to choose schooling for your children. As I say, freedom to travel, freedom to express yourself in whatever way you wish in your own circumstances, freedom to lead your own private life in the way you wish, or even some freedoms, obviously, that we take for granted that were new in, say, post-communist China, freedom to wear your own clothes and buy your own car. These are private freedoms. Now, the difference between public freedoms and private freedoms, the public ones are the ones that affect your behavior in the public realm. They are freedom of association, freedom of speech, freedom to vote in multi-party elections, and most important of all, freedom to act vigorously in the public realm, freedom to cause trouble. How many members of the public going about their daily lives really wish to challenge those with power? Ladies and gentlemen, one can accept the fact, and one can live quite comfortably with the fact, that one is sufficiently free. In the global order of the past 2 decades, the alliance of political leaders, business, and the middle classes was the key to this pact. This arrangement is built on a clear but usually discrete set of understandings. What matters in all these societies is that the number of people who benefit from the pact, as I have described, gradually increases, and that the state remains flexible enough to meet their various needs. These could be summarized as property rights, contract law, environmental protection, lifestyle choices, and the right to travel. But the preeminent freedom in the past 20 years in this era of globalized wealth has been financial, the right to earn money and to keep it. The context changed during 2008 as years of steady growth ended spectacularly. The collapse of the banks led not only to economic crisis, but called into question the future of governments that had derived their legitimacy through securing sustained well-being for their peoples. Yet far from unraveling the pact, in my view, the global financial collapse has enhanced it. Western countries that had dismissed the idea of the state as an economic force are once again rehabilitating it. In conditions of insecurity, and with the state once again intervening wherever it sees fit, the conditions are propitious to assume even greater control over other aspects of people's day-to-day lives. The clamor for security that was exploited after the terrorist attacks here in New York in 2001 can just as easily be adapted for any other kind of emergency, such as an economic emergency. So, after Singapore, which I have already discussed, I move on to China. The discussion on China ranges across many themes, but it seeks specifically to identify this question of public and private freedoms. I was struck during my travels at the great candor of my conversations, not just one-to-one chats, but even round-table discussions as well. Everyone has agreed that the rate of progress has been remarkable in the past 3 decades. The acceptance of the G20 as the true global forum is, as many commentators have already pointed out, not just recognition of the relic status of the G8, but tacit acceptance of the role of the G2, America and China, as the big power players. But where does China go from here? Or, more to the point, exactly what kind of reforms are sought? To what extent will political and human rights reform ever take place? Nobody seems to know. Out-of-bounds markers, to use a golfing phrase that's increasingly popular in China, keep on shifting from day to day, from region to region. Free speech, even if formally circumscribed in China, particularly on the internet, is alive and well on the streets and in semi-private situations. The government is trying to manage and channel it through a combination of technology, modern-day spin techniques, and old-fashioned brute force.